Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tech TLDR. Today we have some news and stuff to talk about regarding these SN11, the most recent Starship that will be taking flight. Hopefully at the end of this week, we're going to be talking about that. We're looking at other flights that happen within Rocket Lab company, as well as upcoming ones with SpaceX besides the SN11. We're also going to be talking about a private company that is looking to get rid of space junk with their own piece of technology they just put into orbit very recently. We're going to talk about everything. So if you want to know the entire stories, be sure to stick through the whole episode. Also drop a like on the video to stay on the space side of the YouTube algorithm. And let's get into this video. So the SN11. I haven't made a video in a little bit about anything SpaceX related, anything space related. Reason being is the SN11 is pretty much on the high horse of everything going on right now. And with its static fire being delayed day by day, it just didn't really make any sense for me to make a video saying, hey, it got delayed again, and that'd pretty much be the basis of every video. It just didn't seem like it made sense. SN11 successfully, though, yesterday went under a static fire test. SpaceX was able to successfully do this. They did one back on March 15th. However, they had to abort that static fire, and they didn't do any swaps or anything like that. So this static fire was successful. They're now ready to do an actual launch of the SN11. Hopefully they can land it without it exploding post 8 minutes like the SN10 did. A big part of that problem was the landing legs of the SN10, and they've already tested those on the SN11. They've got those working properly. So I'm hoping that I'm confident that we'll see a landing. It's just, is it going to be that bumpy landing that we saw with the SN10? That's the question. Now this video is coming from NASA Space Flight, Chris B from there. Great content. Also, Mary had tweeted that the flight termination systems on the SN11 are installed. So what is that? What is the flight termination? On these Starships, they have these flight terminations that, let's say it's going straight up into the air. If all of a sudden this thing just goes off trajectory and launches itself towards the city, they need a way to turn it off. With old previous rocket technology, with old stuff from NASA, they didn't have that option. Once you lit that fuse and that thing started going, that was it. You had no way to turn it off until it ran out of fuel, pretty much. So the flight termination system is a kill switch. It's as simple as that. If something goes wrong with the Starship, with the SN11, it starts doing something it is completely not supposed to do, they can turn it off, everything will shut down, and it'll just come plummeting back down to the Earth. That is the final thing that is installed on these Starships before they launch. We've seen it with all the previous Starships so far. So when is the SN11 going to actually take flight? So there's two different contradicting pieces of information we have. However, I'm confident that the earliest we'll see it is March 26th. So if we go on the FAA's NOTAM website, we can see that March 26th is going to be the earliest in that area until March 27th. That'll be when they have the clearance, space clearance, that is air clearance, to do any sort of testing. And they also have FAA approval regarding the safety regulations with the Starships, as we didn't see before. Remember with the SN9, the SN8, there were problems because SpaceX wasn't really complying with their safety measures, or at least they didn't give them proof that they were complying. They now have that. There's no issues regarding the FAA and SpaceX. They are on good terms, and the Starships, the program, is up to par with what the FAA expects. So that's not a problem. Again, March 26th, March 27th is when the clearance happens. The only thing that contradicts that is just the road and beach closures in that area. It's March 24th and 25th. They have closures scheduled, but I mean, I'm gonna go with the FAA on this one, believe it or not. I think they're a little more legitimate than like a local beach closure. So if I had to put my money on one thing, I'm going with March 26th. This Friday would be the earliest that we can see the SN11 actually take flight. Now, talking about Mary again, she had tweeted that the booster, the BN1, had been moved inside the high bay, which is just odd because she had tweeted this like a few days ago, and everybody was kind of confused what that meant. Like, how could you move it to the high bay if it's in the high bay? And what she meant by that is that it actually had been moved and shuffled around within the high bay, leaving people to speculate that possibly that the SN15 could be going into the high bay next to it. That is a possibility that people are wondering about. And with this booster, by the way, I now have information on what it's actually going to be for. On one of my previous episodes, we were still kind of not sure. And let me know in the comments what you think of why they're moving this booster around. But the reason for it is that the booster, the BN1, what this is going to actually be used for, it's not going to be used for any launch project at all. It's not going to be put into orbit, or not in orbit, just in the air. It's going to strictly be for testing the transport of the booster. how can they move this around and get it from the high bay to an actual launch pad, and how can they maneuver it around, because they've never moved anything like this before. It's huge. I mean, this thing is absolutely massive. And so before they actually put any engines into it, before they put any sort of money, really is what it comes down to, any money into it, they want to make sure that they can transport it around and get it around without it toppling over and destroying itself or causing more collateral damage in the process. So that's coming actually from SpaceX and Elon Musk. That is what they're intending to do with it. It's strictly to test the transportation of the boosters. Final piece of SpaceX related content. Upcoming on March 24th tomorrow, SpaceX is looking to do another Falcon 9 launch for the Starlink program, the program that will be putting more satellites into orbit to give people all over the planet affordable, high-speed internet, and to also cash flow SpaceX's endeavors to get us to Mars. More exciting stuff. I talk about this all the time. Just want to give you guys an update on the launches that they are doing. Speaking of launches, Rocket Lab, they successfully launched their little Electron into orbit just last night, and they put 104 satellites into orbit. So that's pretty exciting from Rocket Lab. If you hadn't watched one of my previous episodes, they're going on the stock market very soon. They also announced their Neutron rocket, which is going to be an even bigger payload than what they're currently doing with these Electrons. So more exciting stuff coming from Rocket Lab. It's a company I really want to be, I really want them to do more and more so I can talk about them more in my episodes. So it's not just SpaceX, because we all know, with NASA, with Boeing and Lockheed Martin, with working with them, there ain't much news to talk about, at least not good news. Blue Origin, same thing. They're 20 years behind. Let's be realistic here. They're not really close to me being able to frequently talk about what they're doing. But I think Rocket Lab, they're really close to being a company that is going to be having frequent news the way SpaceX is. It's going to be on a smaller scale, but it's still going to be some cool information coming from them nevertheless. And now the last thing I wanted to talk about, this is coming from spaceflightnow.com. This is their article that they wrote yesterday about a privately funded mission. It's kind of confusing, so bear with me on this one. It's called the ELSAD. So why is this confusing? Again, this is just a TLDR. So this is a Japanese-based private company that used the Russian Soyuz to launch in orbit. They launched from Kazakhstan, and it's going to be run by the United Kingdom Space Agency. There's so many entities involved in this, so that's why I'm saying it's really confusing. Because if you think with like a SpaceX program, for example, SpaceX has a customer. The customer has them put it into space, and it just kind of seems that's it. There's not 4 different entities involved in it, but nevertheless, yes, the ELSAD, the satellite program, is going to be in orbit, and it successfully went up into the sky in orbit just last night, like I said. While it's not going to be performing the actual task right now, it's going to be doing like demonstrations to test that it actually works, and then it'll go about, like I said before, it's using like a magnetic docking technology to bring in no good satellites, or even, it doesn't have to be satellites, just any debris that it can attach itself to, collect it, and then make sure it's angled right, poof it back into the Earth's orbit, or not in the orbit, but the atmosphere, burn it up, and there you go. That's all I have for you guys in this episode today. Like I said, I hadn't made a few episodes because just those past few days, there was nothing for me to really actually get into. So that's why I didn't forget about this channel or anything like that. If you like this content, be sure to drop a like. If you want more of the content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think, and be sure to have a good one.